Hello, and welcome to Gloomy Realm. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, unsettling stories that quietly lead you into forgotten places where darkness lingers and mysteries never fade, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, let your body settle into stillness, and allow the sounds of the outside world to gently disappear. Tonight, the night invites you beyond the familiar, into a place where every whisper tells a story and every shadow remembers the past. So close your eyes, listen closely, and leave the ordinary behind. Welcome to the Gloomy Realm. Story 1. Sometimes, if you stand in a completely dark room for long enough, you start to see things that are not really there. Your mind tries to make sense of the dark. It takes a pile of clothes and turns it into a face. It takes the back of a chair and turns it into a person standing in the corner. It grabs at every shape and shadow because it wants to understand what your eyes cannot. Most of the time, that is all it is. A trick. A mistake. Your brain trying to protect you from the unknown. But when I was about 7 years old, I saw something in my house that I have never been able to explain away. For most of my life, I tried to tell myself it was just a nightmare, or something my young mind had turned into a monster. But there are details I still remember too clearly. There are things that happened afterward that do not fit with a dream. It was late, and we had just finished dinner. I remember that because it had been taco night, and taco night was one of the only meals I actually looked forward to as a kid. My parents were downstairs in the living room, resting on the couch and watching TV. I was supposed to go upstairs and get ready for bed. At that age, the stairs terrified me. Our stairwell was built in a way that made it impossible to see the top until you were already halfway up. The upper hallway always looked dim from below. The lights upstairs were weak, and sometimes one of the bulbs would go out without anyone replacing it right away. They were not bright enough to make the hallway feel safe. They only gave just enough light to show you where the darkness began. The bathroom was the only room upstairs with any real light. It had bright bulbs around the mirror that always made me squint when I walked in. The light was so strong that I had to lift my hands to cover my eyes until they adjusted. My room had a small lamp, but the hallway between the bathroom and the bedroom stayed dark in patches. My parents' bedroom was farther down the hall, closer to the guest room than to mine. That meant whenever I woke from a nightmare or got scared at night, I had a choice. I could cross the dark hallway to get to my parents', or I could stay in my bed and deal with the fear alone. Most nights, I stayed in bed. My bed felt like the only safe place upstairs. I believed that if I hid under my blanket, nothing could find me. I thought the blanket worked like a shield, and the mattress was some invisible border monsters could not cross. It sounds silly now, but when you are 7, fear has its own rules. Usually, before going upstairs, I would beg one of my parents to come with me and check for monsters. But that night, I was determined to be brave. I did not want to keep being afraid of things that might not even exist. I told myself I was old enough to walk upstairs alone. I told myself there was nothing waiting for me. So I started climbing. The first few steps were fine. I could still hear the TV downstairs and the low murmur of my parents talking. That helped. But when I reached the halfway point, the sound from downstairs faded behind me, and a heavy feeling came over my body. It was dread, not normal fear, not the kind of fear that comes from shadows or an overactive imagination. It felt like every part of my body knew something my mind did not. My legs wanted to turn around. My chest felt tight. My skin prickled like something had breathed on the back of my neck. But I kept going. As I climbed higher, I could see more of the hallway. The fear faded a little. The weak lights above me glowed faintly, trying and failing to do their one job. They looked tired, like they had already given up. When I finally reached the top of the stairs, I stopped and looked around. For a moment, everything seemed normal. It was just our hallway. The same hallway I had walked through hundreds of times. Family photos hung on the walls. The doors were in their usual places. My bedroom was to one side, the bathroom nearby, my parents' room farther down, and the guest room at the end. It was only a hallway. It could not be hiding a monster. That was what I told myself. At first, I did not notice anything wrong. Every door upstairs was closed, even the bathroom door, though light pushed weakly around the edges. It looked like the bathroom light was trapped inside, trying to escape through the thin cracks, but unable to get past the door. Then, I saw the eyes. At the far end of the hall, directly across from me, just under the bottom of the guest room door, there were two small, beady eyes staring at me. They were so tiny that I almost missed them. I had already started toward the bathroom, proud of myself for reaching the top of the stairs, when I noticed them properly. I stopped. I rubbed my eyes. I blinked hard several times. I wanted the eyes to disappear. I wanted them to become a reflection, or a speck of dust, or some trick of the faint hallway light. But they stayed there. They were very dim. If the hallway had been any brighter, I might not have seen them at all. But in that weak darkness, they stood out. Two little points of life under the doorframe. I froze. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run back downstairs. I wanted my parents. But I could not move. It felt like minutes passed, though it was probably only a few seconds. My eyes stayed fixed on the bottom of the guest room door. I became aware of my own breathing, and when a small breath escaped me, I almost jumped. The eyes did not blink. They did not move. They just stared back at me. Then I became aware of the other doors in the hallway. My room, the bathroom, my parents' room, all of them were closed, but only the guest room had something looking out from under it. Part of me wanted to get closer. I think that is how fear works sometimes. It makes you want to understand the thing that is frightening you. If I could see what it was, maybe it would stop being scary. But the moment that thought entered my mind, panic took over. I ran into the bathroom and slammed the door shut behind me. My hands fumbled with the lock. I twisted the bolt, and right as I did, I heard something in the hallway. It sounded like hooves scraping against the wooden floor. The sound was quiet and slow. Scratch, pause, scratch, like whatever was out there had started moving but was trying not to be heard. Like it knew I had seen it and wanted to become invisible again. My fear got worse. I backed away from the bathroom door until I hit the opposite wall. My eyes stayed wide open, fixed on the space beneath the door. I waited to see those tiny eyes appear again. I waited for the handle to shake. I waited for the door to rattle, for the thing outside to push its way in, for me to finally see whatever had been watching me from the guest room. But nothing happened. The scratching came closer, then stopped outside the bathroom. After that, there was only silence. I stayed pressed against the wall, too scared to cry, too scared to call for help. I knew my parents were downstairs, but the idea of making noise felt dangerous. I thought if I screamed, the thing outside would know exactly where I was, even though part of me understood it already knew. Then I heard another sound. This one came from outside the window. At first, it sounded like something digging through the trash beside the house. A raccoon, maybe. We had them around sometimes. I climbed onto the sink carefully, trying to look through the window. That was when I saw the man. He was standing in the side yard. He was large, much taller than my father. He stood in the middle of the yard, completely still, looking up at the bathroom window, looking directly at me. I ducked down so fast I almost slipped from the sink. For a few seconds, I stayed low, my heart hammering in my ears. Then I slowly raised my head and looked again. He was still there. He had not moved at all. The trees behind him shifted slightly in the night air, but he was stiller than the trunks. His shape was dark, and I could not see his face clearly, but I knew he was looking at me. I do not know how long I stayed in that bathroom. Every few minutes, I would force myself to check the window again. Each time, the man was still there, standing in the side yard, staring up at me. Eventually, I stopped looking. I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the wall, too frightened to move. I wanted to cry, but I was afraid any sound would bring the thing from the hallway or the man from outside. After a long time, I heard noise again. This time, it came from inside the house, near the stairwell. Heavy footsteps. Angry footsteps. Someone was running up the stairs. I could not bring myself to open the bathroom door. I could only sit there as the footsteps came closer. They moved down the hall and stopped right outside the bathroom. I held my breath. Then the door flew open. I screamed louder than I ever had in my life. I curled into myself, crying and shaking, sure that the man from outside had come in, or that the thing with the little eyes had finally opened the door. But it was not the man. It was my parents. They stood above me, frightened and confused. In my panic, I had not looked up properly at first. I only heard their voices after they dropped down beside me and wrapped their arms around me. They asked what was wrong. They asked why I was in the bathroom. They asked why I had been silent for so long. I told them everything as best as I could through sobs. I told them about the eyes under the guest room door. I told them about the hoof sounds in the hallway. I told them about the man outside the bathroom window. They held me and told me I had scared myself. They said I must have imagined it. They said the dark can play tricks. They apologized for falling asleep on the couch and not checking on me sooner. They were kind about it, but I could tell they did not believe me. I begged them to look out the window. They did. There was no man. My dad picked me up so I could see for myself. The side yard was empty. The trees were still. The trash cans near the wall looked messy, but there was no tall figure standing in the grass. Then, I remembered the guest room. I told them to check it. My dad opened the door, turned on the light, and looked inside. Nothing, no creature, no animal, no small eyes under the door, no hoof marks on the floor. The room was exactly as it always was. My parents took me downstairs to the living room. They made me hot chocolate and let me sleep on the couch that night while they stayed nearby. I remember lying there, wrapped in a blanket, watching the TV flicker without understanding what was on. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those two little eyes staring at me from under the door. The next morning, my parents went outside to check the side of the house. They found the garbage bags torn open and dragged along the wall. Trash was scattered across the ground. When I reminded them about the noise I heard outside the bathroom window, they told me it had probably been a family of raccoons digging through the garbage. For the next few weeks, they went upstairs with me every night. Sometimes even during the day, if I asked. They were patient. They checked the guest room. They checked under my bed. They checked the bathroom. They did everything they could to help me forget that night. And for a while, it worked. Then one day, I was sitting in the living room while my mom talked on the phone with one of her friends from work. My dad was sitting nearby reading the newspaper. For some reason, a question came into my mind. How had they gotten into the bathroom if I had locked the door? I turned to my dad and asked him. He chuckled a little. The door wasn't locked, he said. We just turned the handle. His answer confused me. I knew I had locked it. I remembered twisting the bolt. I remembered the sound of it sliding into place right before the scratching started in the hallway. I did not argue with him. Instead, I asked if I could go play outside. He said yes. I went straight to the side yard. I walked to the exact place where the man had been standing that night. At first, I saw nothing, just grass and dirt near the wall of the house. Then, I noticed the marks. 2 hoof prints. They were pressed deep into the ground. Not shoe prints, not animal tracks I recognized. Hoof prints, 2 of them, side by side, exactly where the man had stood while staring up at the bathroom window. I started tearing at the grass with my hands. I do not know why. I think I wanted to erase them before anyone else could see. I wanted to destroy the proof because proof meant it was real. Proof meant it had not been a nightmare. Proof meant something had stood there in our yard and watched me. For most of my life, I pushed that memory down. I told myself I had been a scared child. I told myself I had dreamed it. I told myself raccoons had gotten into the trash, and my mind had turned the sound into hooves. I told myself the marks in the ground could have been anything. But last night, I was sitting in bed, watching a show on my laptop, when I heard something outside. At first, it sounded like a raccoon digging through garbage. Then I heard another sound. It was faint. So faint I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. Hooves scraping against wood. It is early morning now, and I am shaking while I type this. I do not know what I saw when I was 7. I do not know what stood outside my bathroom window. I do not know how something unlocked that door without opening it. But I think it has found me again. Please, if anyone knows what this is, help me. Story 2. I don't remember much from my childhood home. There are a few small memories, the kind you have to dig for, but not many clear ones. I remember the smell of dust in the upstairs hallway during summer. I remember the sound the stairs made when my dad came home from work. I remember lying on the floor in my room building things out of old Lego pieces. I remember the pond in the front yard where I once dumped a couple of giant goldfish when I was 8. But happy memories are harder to find. That does not mean I had a bad childhood. I didn't. My parents were not cruel people. We had food, a warm house, nice Christmas mornings, and birthday dinners at restaurants that felt fancy to me at the time. Nothing terrible happened to me there, at least nothing I knew about back then. It was just boring. We never went on vacations. No cruises. No trips across the country. Not even many trips outside our state. We stayed in our small rural town and lived the same quiet life year after year. My name is Aiden. I was named after my grandfather, though I never met him. My dad came from Ireland when he was in his mid-20s. He never talked much about his father, and when he did, it was never with warmth. He didn't have to say much for me to understand that my grandfather had not been a pleasant man. My dad worked from 7 in the morning to 5 in the evening at a factory that made copper parts for an electronics company. My mother worked as a waitress at a local chain restaurant. We were not rich, but money was never something I heard them panic about. Bills were paid, the fridge was full, I had new shoes when I needed them, life was stable. I am saying all this so you understand where I came from. I didn't have much experience outside that little town. I did not know much about the world beyond fields, back roads, school, and the same people I had known since I was a kid. When I turned 18, I left for college. That was the first time I really left the state. It was also my first time living in a real city. I mean a real city, with buildings taller than 3 stories, buses, busy streets, crowded coffee shops, and people who did not know my family name the moment they met me. It felt huge and exciting and terrifying all at once. I studied communications because I had always dreamed of becoming a radio DJ. Looking back, I probably should have chosen something more practical, something that might lead to a better paying job. But I was 18 when I chose my major, and 18-year-olds are not famous for making careful life decisions. By the time this happened, I was about to become a senior, so it felt too late to turn back. College was where I met Lena. Her full name was Alina, but everyone called her Lena. It started as a dumb joke when we first met her. Someone said, "Hey." Lena so fast it sounded like "Hey Lena," and for some reason we all thought it was hilarious. After that, the name stuck. Lena and I became close fast. We liked the same music, the same movies, and a lot of the same strange late-night conversations. We could sit in a car for hours talking about old songs, bad horror films, childhood fears, or the kind of futures we thought we might have if we ever got our lives together. It was not a romantic friendship. At least I didn't think it was. But she was important to me. More important than I admitted at the time. When I left for college, my parents sold our old house and moved into a smaller one-story place. They said the new house was easier for them. My mom was getting older, and my dad had been 52 when I was born, so the stairs had started to bother him. The old house was sold to a land developer, but nothing had been done with the property. It just sat there, empty and forgotten. I explained all of this to Lena as we sat in my car at the entrance to the old driveway. She had come home with me for the summer. Her parents had disowned her years earlier. She had been raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and when she left at 16 to live with her grandmother, her parents cut her off completely. They acted like they had never had a daughter at all. She did not like talking about it, and I never pushed too hard. Because of that situation, she often stayed with friends during holidays and summer break. That year, she asked if she could stay with my family for a while. My parents had a spare room in the new house, so it was no problem. On the drive there, she asked me about the old house. I told her we would pass it before getting into town, and she insisted on seeing it. I agreed. My parents were not expecting us for a couple of hours anyway, and I didn't see any harm in showing her where I grew up. It was around 5 in the evening when I pulled into the driveway. The old house stood about a quarter mile away from the road. The gravel driveway was narrow, with tall grass growing on both sides. The yard had not been cared for in years. The grass was knee-high, and weeds and bushes had swallowed much of the ground near the house. Still, the place looked better than I expected. There was no graffiti, no broken windows that I could see, no signs that teenagers had used it as a party spot. Since it was just outside town, I guessed most people never bothered coming out that far. As I drove closer, I noticed the small pond in the middle of the front yard was dry. That was the same pond where I had thrown those goldfish as a kid. Seeing it empty made the memory feel strange, like it belonged to someone else. "You had a way nicer house than I did," Lena said as we walked up the porch steps. She had once shown me pictures of the house she grew up in. It looked more like a trailer home, small and plain, but in every photo, she looked happy. I never asked why she left. Not directly. The front door was unlocked. That bothered me a little, but I tried not to show it. The moment I opened it, a musty smell rolled out and wrapped around us. It smelled like dust, old wood, and air that had been trapped for too long. The door opened into the living room. Most of the room was empty, except for our old ripped couch and a few bookcases and shelves along the walls. The staircase to the second floor was opposite the couch, behind where the TV used to be. "Careful of the cobwebs," I said as Lena stepped inside. She looked up at the ceiling with a nervous smile. "Good to know." "The hallway's over there," I said, pointing to the open doorway in the far left corner. "Not much down here, just the living room, kitchen, bathroom, and family room." We walked through the house together. The kitchen was huge, with a large island and more counter space than anyone really needed. It opened into the family room, which my mother had turned into a kind of library. She had inherited her mother's book collection and filled the whole room with shelves. The books were gone now, but the empty bookcases still stood against the walls and covered the windows, making the room dark even with daylight outside. Upstairs held all the bedrooms. Lena had a great time making fun of how small my room had been. I tried to defend it, but there was not much to say. It really had been tiny. The master bedroom, on the other hand, took up almost half the upstairs by itself. "I'm about ready to eat," I said after she had looked around for a while. "You ready?" "Yeah," she said, though she was still digging through some boxes of junk we had left behind. "Why is all this stuff still here?" She held up a plastic bag of Legos. "Just old stuff," I said. "I didn't want to bring it to college, and my parents didn't want to pack it. You should have donated it or something. It's all toys." She dropped the bag back into the box. "They're grimy now anyway." "Let's go." I went down the stairs first. I had reached the front door when I realized Lena was not behind me. I turned. She was standing halfway down the stairs, staring across the living room at the bookcase behind the old couch. "What's up?" I asked. She took another couple of steps down, but her eyes stayed fixed on the bookcase. "Aiden," she said quietly, "what's that room behind the bookcase?" I looked at the wall behind the couch. "What are you talking about?" She came down the rest of the stairs and walked over to the bookcase. "There's an outline of a door behind this," she said. "I saw it from the stairs." I looked closer, but I still didn't understand. The bookcase had been there for years. I helped my dad put it up when I was 12 or 13. It had been placed against a plain wall because the family room shelves were too full, and my mother needed extra space for books. "There isn't any room there," I said. Lena grabbed my arm, helped me slide it. I hesitated, but she was already trying to move it. I stepped beside her and pushed against one side. The bookcase shifted. Behind it was a door. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. It was a plain brown wooden door, but the doorknob was missing. I realized that must have been why the bookcase had been able to sit flat against it. "I have no idea what this is," I said. "I helped put this bookcase here. There wasn't a door behind it." Lena reached into the empty doorknob hole and pulled. The door opened. Behind it were stairs leading down. "What the hell?" I said. It was not really a question. It was the only thing my brain could manage. Our house was not supposed to have a basement. The land sat too close to a bedrock deposit. My dad had said years ago that digging a basement there would have been ridiculously expensive. And yet there it was, a stairway leading into the dark. Light from the living room reached down to the bottom step, where I could see a concrete floor. Beyond that, the room below was swallowed by darkness. "Do you have flashlights?" Lena asked. I looked at her. "You want to go down there? Your parents built a secret basement, and you don't want to check it out?" I hated that she had a point. If my parents had built this, why had they never told me? Why hide it behind a bookcase? Why remove the doorknob? I went outside to my car and opened the trunk. I had an emergency flashlight there, a heavy one with a strong beam. I grabbed it and came back inside. Then Lena and I went down the stairs. The first basement room was small and square. It looked like a normal basement, or at least close enough to one. Empty shelves lined the walls, cobwebs hung in the corners. My flashlight passed over rusty tools, empty chemical bottles, and old stains on the concrete floor. Nothing seemed important. I was about to suggest we leave when Lena gasped. My flashlight beam had landed on the wall behind the stairs. There was another door. They built a closet down here too? I said, trying to sound calm. I opened it. My jaw dropped. Beyond the door was a large room. I don't like this, Lena said. This is bizarre. She was right. The room was massive and empty. My flashlight cut through the darkness as we stepped inside. The moment I crossed the doorway, something strange happened. My ears popped. It was subtle, like the feeling you get when driving down a steep hill or going up in an elevator too fast, but I felt it clearly. I turned toward Lena. She was rubbing one of her ears, so I knew she felt it too. The air was different in there. Heavier, maybe thicker. Dust floated through the beam of my flashlight, and I suddenly realized breathing it in probably wasn't good for us. The floor was carpeted, but the carpet was old and dirty and carried the same musty smell as the rest of the house. I walked toward the center of the room and shined my light around. That was when I realized the room was wider and longer than the house above it. Not by a little, by several feet. I stood there, trying to make sense of that, when my flashlight passed over another door to our left. "What in the hell is this?" I whispered. Lena held my arm as we walked toward it. The next room looked like a dining room. A large oval table sat in the center, surrounded by old chairs. On the opposite wall was a sliding pantry door. To our right was another door. I noticed a light switch near the entrance. I knew the power to the old house had been shut off years ago, but for some reason, I flipped the switch. The dining room lit up. A ceiling fan above the table held several bulbs that gave off a sick yellow light. The color made the room look rotten. "Aiden, what is going on?" Lena asked. She looked scared now. I was scared too, but curiosity had already sunk its claws into me. "I don't know," I said. "This place is weird as hell. It's bigger than the house." I walked to the pantry and slid it open. Inside were shelves filled with cans of food. Lena reached over my shoulder and grabbed one. "Look at this label," she said, turning it in her hands. "It's old. It doesn't even have an expiration date." I moved to the door on the right side of the room and pulled it open. There was another room. This one was circular, with a stone floor and light bulbs lining the walls. Across from us was another door, but it was not like the others. It looked like it was made of steel or iron, thick and heavy, like a vault door. "We should leave," Lena said. "We can come back later." I barely heard her. The door had no handle, no knob, nothing normal. Instead, it had a series of sliding metal locks across it. I started moving them one by one. They scraped loudly as they slid out of place. "Aiden," Lena said, her voice shaky. I ignored her. When the last lock was open, I put my shoulder against the door and pushed. I expected it to be heavy, but it moved with strange ease once the locks were undone. The room beyond it was enormous. It was so large that my mind could not accept it at first. It stretched ahead of us like an underground hangar, maybe the size of a football field. The ceiling was only a little taller than me, which made the space feel low and endless at the same time. Dim bulbs were strung across the ceiling, casting weak yellow light over the clutter below. Boxes, shelves, tables, benches, and piles of old objects filled the room. Tables had been arranged in ways that formed narrow paths through the mess, turning the whole place into something like a maze. "Oh wow," Lena said. Some of the fear left her voice for a moment, replaced by shock. We stepped inside. The paths twisted in different directions. Every few feet, there was something else to look at. Old cardboard boxes, rusted tools, stacks of papers, broken chairs, wooden crates, shelves packed with objects I could not name. "There's no way my parents built this," I said. "No damn way." Lena stopped beside one of the tables and picked up a dusty picture frame. She stared at it for a few seconds before handing it to me. "Who's this?" The photo was grainy and old. It showed a small child with messy blonde hair standing in the dining room we had just passed through. "I don't know," I said. "I don't know anyone with blonde hair." Lena shook her head. Then she froze. "Look," she pointed to my left. At first, I thought I was looking at a wall. Then I realized it was a pile of picture frames stacked almost to the ceiling. We walked closer, and each picked one up. Each frame held a picture of a different child standing in that same dining room. None of them were familiar. Boys, girls, toddlers, older kids. Some smiled, some looked scared, some looked blank. The pile reached at least 8 feet high. There had to be hundreds of frames. "Aiden," Lena said, and the fear was back in her voice. "We need to go." Now, I was having trouble understanding what I was seeing. I kept picking up frames, hoping one would make sense. It never did. Every photo showed a different child. "I don't get this," I muttered. Lena grabbed my arm and pulled me back to the path. "Come on, we need to tell someone about this." We started walking back the way we came. At least, I thought we did. After a minute, I realized I did not recognize anything. The tables looked different, the shelves looked different. The door was gone. I stopped and looked around. We had not walked far into the room, maybe 100 feet at most. The door should have been easy to see. I climbed onto a nearby table to get a better look, but there was no sign of it. "Aiden," Lena said, "where is the door?" I did not answer. I climbed down and started walking in another direction, stepping over boxes and pushing between tables. Lena followed close behind, stumbling now and then as I helped her over the clutter. After several minutes, we found a stone wall. That gave me hope. If we followed the wall, we would eventually find the door. That was simple enough. I chose a direction, and we started walking. "We have to find it," Lena said. "We just used it." "I know." The wall eventually curved inward, and we found ourselves in a small nook. Countertops formed a U shape around the space ahead of us. I started walking into it when Lena grabbed me around the waist. "Stop." I saw why immediately. In the center of the floor was a circular pit. At least I thought it was a pit. It was perfectly black, not dark like a hole in the ground, not shadowed, pure black. The kind of black that looked unreal, like someone had cut a circle out of the world and left nothing behind. I knelt near the edge and shined my flashlight into it. The beam disappeared. It did not reflect. It did not show depth. The light was simply swallowed. "What is it?" Lena whispered, kneeling beside me. "I have no idea," I said. "It's like there's nothing there, but it's something." I don't know why I did what I did next. Maybe I was scared and curious. Maybe the place was affecting my mind. Maybe I was just stupid. I reached out and touched the surface of the black circle. My hand passed right through. "I think it's a pit," I said, moving my hand slowly back and forth inside the darkness. "It doesn't look like one," Lena said. She ran her fingers around the rim, trying to feel where the floor dropped away. I reached deeper, trying to feel a bottom or a wall or anything at all. "Get your hand out of there," Lena said. "I'm just trying to." I stopped. Something breathed on my arm. A split second later, pain exploded through me. It was the worst pain I had ever felt. I screamed and yanked my arm upward. Lena grabbed my elbow and helped pull. My hand came out of the blackness and blood sprayed across the floor. I fell onto my back, clutching my wrist. My arm felt like it was on fire. I looked down. Half of my hand was gone. Every finger except my thumb had been torn away. Ragged pieces of flesh hung where they had been. I could not speak. The pain was too much. My breath came fast and sharp, and black spots crawled across my vision. Lena wrapped her arms around me and tried to pull me upright. "Let me see," she shouted. I held up my ruined hand, barely able to look at it. She ripped off her shirt, leaving on the tank top underneath, and wrapped the fabric tightly around the wound. The pressure sent another wave of pain up my arm, and I nearly passed out. As I lay there, I looked up at her. Her face was covered in my blood. She turned away and spat onto the floor. I realized some of it had gotten into her mouth. My blood was on her teeth and lips. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on anything other than the pain. Then, Lena screamed. I opened my eyes. She was being dragged toward the pit. Something had grabbed her leg, though I could not see what it was. She clawed at the floor, trying to pull herself away. I rolled over and grabbed her arm with my good hand. Whatever had her was not strong, or maybe it had not gotten a good grip, because I was able to pull her back. Somehow, I got to my feet and dragged her away from the pit. After a few feet, she managed to stand too. "Let's go," I shouted. We ran. I do not know how long we ran. We were not going in any real direction. We just followed the twisting paths between tables and shelves, trying to put distance between us and that black hole. After a while, the pain in my hand became dull enough for me to think again. Lena had tied the shirt tight, and the bleeding had slowed, but I knew I had lost a lot of blood. "Stop," I said, holding out my good arm. We slowed down, both breathing hard. "Let me see your hand again," Lena said. "What the hell was that?" I asked, though I knew she had no answer. She checked the knot she had made with her shirt. "We're leaving and calling the police." I looked around for the door. Still nothing. "We have to find the way out," she said. "You lost a lot of blood back there." She picked a direction and started walking. I followed. We walked for several minutes. Still no door. Then I bumped into her when she stopped suddenly. She bent forward slightly and let out a small breath. "Do you want me to check you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head and kept walking. My hand started burning again, worse than before. I clutched it against my chest and tried not to make noise. Then we turned a corner. The door was ahead. I had never felt so relieved in my life. We moved from a fast walk into a jog, climbing over chairs and pushing past tables. The metal door was still open, and beyond it was the circular stone room. As we reached it, a sharp pain shot up my arm. I cried out. Lena turned and grabbed my wrist. She looked like she was in pain too, though she was trying to hide it. She untied her shirt from around my hand. "Oh God," she whispered. I forced myself to look. Something was growing where my fingers had been torn away. At first, it was only a bulge of raw flesh. Then 4 tiny fingers began pushing out of it. They grew slowly and quickly at the same time, stretching from the ruined skin. The pain was just as terrible as when the fingers had been torn off. Then I realized I could move them. They were small, but they worked. Lena suddenly bent over again, this time unable to hold back a groan. "Are you okay?" I asked through the pain. That was when I saw her stomach. She was clutching her abdomen. A bulge was growing there, pushing outward under her skin. "Come on." I yelled. I grabbed her shoulder and dragged her out of the huge room. She leaned against me, barely able to walk. I pulled the metal door closed behind us and slid all the locks back into place. Lena groaned louder. I turned and saw her sitting against the wall in the circular room. The swelling in her stomach had grown fast. In seconds, she looked heavily pregnant. I could not understand what I was seeing. Then she screamed, "Aiden!" I helped her to her feet. The bulbs in the room flickered. I pushed open the door to the dining room and pulled her inside. She was leaving a trail of clear fluid behind her. She collapsed against the dining table, holding her stomach. I don't know what's happening. She cried. Her eyes were wide and full of tears. I don't know what to do. I froze. I had no idea how to help her. No idea what was happening. No idea what that place had done to us. Lena screamed again. Blood began running down her legs. The lights flickered harder. I don't know what to do. She sobbed. She climbed onto the dining room table. I rushed forward to help, then stepped back, completely lost. She removed what she needed to remove while I stood there, shaking and useless, barely able to remember my own name. Help. She screamed. That word snapped me back. I ran around the table and grabbed her hand. I don't know how. I shouted. Her face twisted in pain. She screamed again, and I moved toward the end of the table. What I saw was bloody and terrible, and I had no ability to deal with it. Then something started to come out. It was not a head. An arm pushed its way free and grabbed the edge of the table. I fell backward against the wall. Lena's screams grew louder. I crawled away toward the pantry, ignoring her begging. I hate myself for that. I still hear her voice when I try to sleep. I slid into the pantry, pulled the door shut, and pressed my back against the wall. My whole body shook. I covered my ears with my hands and squeezed my eyes shut, but I could still hear her. Her cries cut through everything. I just wanted it to stop. Then the screams ended suddenly. There was a loud thud, like something heavy had fallen to the floor. I opened my eyes. All I could hear now was labored breathing from the dining room. Then came scraping. No, dragging. Something large was dragging itself across the floor. It was coming closer to the pantry. I stopped breathing. The pantry door slowly began to open. Yellow light from the dining room spilled into the small space. A large shape blocked the doorway. One arm stretched forward as it slid the door open. Then I saw its face. It was me. It had my face. Its hair was bloody and matted, but it was mine. Its eyes were wide and wet and also mine. It was naked, slick with blood, and dragging itself toward me as if its legs did not work. I could not scream. I could not move. It grabbed my legs and pulled itself on top of me. Its breathing was rough and broken. It grabbed my shirt and pulled its face close to mine. I was looking at myself, but it was not me. Its mouth twitched. It almost looked like it was smiling. Then a quiet groan came from the dining room. The thing snapped its head toward the doorway. In that moment, my body finally came back to me. I screamed, got my feet under its stomach, and kicked as hard as I could. The thing flew off me and let out an inhuman screech. It writhed on the floor as I scrambled up and jumped over it toward the pantry door. When I looked back, it was arching its back in a way no human body should. I heard cracks from its spine. I ran. I sprinted through the dining room toward the door that led out. I did not look at Lena on the table. I could not. I flung the door open and glanced back. The thing was rising to its feet. I ran through the circular room, through the next doorway, and into the large room connected to the basement. I slammed the door behind me just as I heard footsteps. Then I ran across the room to the next door, pulled it open, and entered the small square basement. Behind me, something struck the door. I climbed the stairs, nearly falling twice. I burst into the living room, slammed the basement door shut, and shoved the bookcase back in front of it. Then, using every bit of strength I had, I pushed the old couch against the bookcase too. Only then did I realize what I had done. I had left Lena down there. That groan I heard in the dining room might have been her. She might have still been alive. But I ran. I went outside. It was still daylight. Somehow all of that had happened before evening. I ran to my car, climbed in, started it, and reversed down the driveway at full speed. I drove like a man who had lost his mind. After a few minutes, I was going 80 miles an hour down the road when a wave of emotion hit me so hard I almost crashed. I pulled over, stumbled out of the car, and collapsed onto the ground. I could not breathe. I clutched my chest and looked down at my hand. It was fully formed. All 5 fingers were there. No wound, no blood, no pain, like nothing had happened. I did not know what else to do, so I drove to the police station. The next several hours were hell. I tried to explain what happened to the first officer I met. He saw the blood on my clothes and thought I had been in an accident. He told me I should go to the hospital. I kept insisting that Lena was trapped under my old house, that there was a hidden basement, that something down there had taken my hand and made something with my face. He did not believe me. I got louder. Then I got desperate. Then I ended up handcuffed and placed in a holding cell. I told the story again and again to different officers. None of them took me seriously. Eventually, they put me in a cruiser and drove me to my parents' house. My parents were confused and terrified, but not in the way I needed them to be. They were more shocked by the idea of a basement under the old house than by anything else I said. They kept telling the officers our old house did not have one. Finally, one officer agreed to search the property. I sat in my room at my parents' new house, staring at the wall for what felt like hours. Then, my parents got a call. The officer had searched the old house. He found no basement. He said when he walked into the living room, he found the bookcase and couch thrown against the stairs, but there was no door behind the bookcase, just a plain wall. After that, I was taken back into custody for filing a false report. My parents knew I had brought a friend home for the summer, but nobody could reach Lena's family. Her parents denied she existed, just like they always had. There was no one to prove she had been with me. No one to demand they keep looking. No one to make them believe me. The police think I was rejected by a girl and invented some story to explain why she left. My parents seem to believe that too, but Lena did not leave. She is still down there, or something that came from her is. It has been 2 days now. One day was spent in jail. The other was spent gathering supplies and writing this, so there is at least some kind of record if I do not come back. I was a coward. I saved myself and left her behind. I am not proud of it. I will never be proud of it. But if she is still down there, even if all I find is her body, I am going back for her. This time, I'm bringing more than a flashlight. Story 3. I had lived in apartment 6B for 4 years. It was not a big place, and it was not beautiful. It had 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a narrow kitchen, and a living room with 2 windows that looked down into the back alley. The walls were painted a tired-off white color that never looked clean, no matter how many times I wiped them. The floorboards creaked in certain spots. The pipes knocked inside the walls when someone above me used hot water. The radiator clicked at night like someone tapping a fingernail against metal. But it was mine. After 4 years, I knew that apartment better than I knew most people. I knew which cabinet door would not stay shut unless I pushed it twice. I knew where the paint had cracked near the bathroom mirror. I knew the exact place in the hallway where the floor dipped slightly under my left foot. I knew the sounds of the building too. My neighbor's TV through the bedroom wall. Traffic from the street below. The elevator groaning when someone used it after midnight. The old man in 4C coughing every morning like clockwork. That was why I noticed the door right away. It was in the hallway between my bedroom and the bathroom, where there had always been a blank wall. A white wooden door. It was plain and old, with a brass doorknob and a simple rectangular frame. There was nothing strange about its design. It looked like the kind of door that might lead to a closet or a small storage room. It looked normal enough that, for a few seconds, my brain tried to accept it. But it had not been there the night before. I stood in the hallway in my t-shirt and sweatpants, holding a mug of coffee I could not remember pouring. I must have made it out of habit, half asleep, because I had no memory of walking into the kitchen. I only remembered turning toward the bathroom and stopping dead. The door looked like it had always belonged there. There was no damage around the frame, no sawdust, no smell of fresh paint, no cracks in the wall where someone might have cut through it. The trim matched the rest of the apartment perfectly, even though I knew that was impossible. I had walked past that wall thousands of times. I had leaned against it while brushing my teeth. I had hung a coat hook there once and taken it down because it looked crooked. There had never been a door. I touched the wall beside it. Solid, I touched the frame. Smooth, then I touched the door. It was cold. Not cool like wood in the morning. Not chilly because the apartment was drafty. It was cold like something stored underground. The kind of cold that feels damp even when the surface is dry. The cold ran up my fingers and into my wrist, and I pulled my hand back before I could stop myself. I called my landlord. "Mr." Keller answered after the third ring. His voice sounded thick, like he had just woken up. "Very funny," he said when I told him. "I'm not joking." There was a long pause. "What kind of door?" I stared at it. "What do you mean, what kind of door?" "A normal door. White, wood, brass knob." Another pause. "This one was worse. Don't open it," he said. I almost laughed. The whole thing was too strange and laughter rose up in me like a reflex. But his voice stopped it before it came out. He did not sound annoyed. He sounded afraid. "Mr. Keller," I said slowly, "why would there be a door in my hallway?" "I'll come over," he said. "Do not open it. Do not touch it again." Then he hung up. I stood there for a long time with the phone still pressed to my ear. The coffee mug felt warm in my hand. The door stood in front of me, plain and quiet and impossible. The apartment had gone silent. Too silent. Usually there was always something. A car passing outside, the radiator ticking, a pipe knocking, someone moving around in another unit. But in that moment, all of it had stopped. It felt as if the whole building had taken a breath and was holding it. Then someone knocked from the other side of the door. 3 slow knocks. I dropped my coffee, the mug shattered on the floor, and hot liquid spread around my bare feet. I barely felt it. I could only stare at the door. The knocks came again, 3 times. Not loud, not desperate, not angry. Polite, like someone standing on the other side, waiting to be invited in. I backed away until I reached the living room. My first thought was to run out into the hallway, but I could not make myself turn my back on it. I went into the kitchen instead and grabbed the heaviest thing I owned, a cast iron pan from the stove. It felt stupid in my hand. What was I going to do, hit a door that had appeared overnight? Still, holding something made me feel slightly less helpless. I waited. Nothing happened. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The door remained still. White wood. Brass knob. No sound. At 9:17, Mr. Keller arrived. He was usually a cheerful man, in a tired kind of way. Round face, red cheeks, thinning hair, always smelling faintly of cigarette smoke and peppermint gum. He liked to talk too much when collecting rent, and he always made the same joke about the elevator being older than everyone in the building combined. That morning, he looked 20 years older. His hair was uncombed. His shirt was buttoned wrong. He pushed past me without saying hello and walked straight into the hallway. Then he saw the door. All the color drained from his face. "No," he whispered. The word was so soft I almost did not hear it. I stood behind him, still holding the pan. "You know what this is?" He did not answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a ring of keys. His hands were shaking so badly that the keys jingled against each other like tiny bells. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Locking it." "From this side?" He ignored me and stepped closer to the door. He tried one key in the brass lock. It did not fit. Then another. Then another. The keys scraped against the metal, useless and loud in the heavy silence. Then the knocking started again. 3 slow knocks. "Mr." Keller froze. A voice came from behind the door. Soft, female. "Martin?" My landlord stepped back as if something had struck him. The key ring slipped from his hand and hit the floor. "Martin," the voice repeated. "I know you're there." I looked at him. "Who is that?" His mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. The voice behind it sighed. It was a sad sound, almost human. "Martin, please," she said. "It's so dark." Miss Keller grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "You need to leave," he said. "What? Now pack a bag. Stay somewhere else." I pulled against his grip. "Are you insane? What is behind that door?" He looked at me then, and I understood something that made my stomach drop. He did not know. Not fully. Before I could ask anything else, the doorknob turned. Very slowly. Left, right, left again. Mr. Keller whispered something in German. I did not understand the words, but I understood the fear in them. He pulled me toward the front door. That was when the voice changed. It became my mother's. "Daniel?" I stopped moving. My mother had died when I was 16. Cancer took her slowly, then all at once. For months, she faded in front of me. Her hair thinned. Her skin turned pale. Her hands became too light when I held them. Then, near the end, the sickness moved fast, and one morning she was gone. I had forgotten many small things about her over the years. The exact way she wore her hair. The perfume she used when I was little. The shape of her handwriting on grocery lists. But I had never forgotten her voice. "Never, Daniel," she said again from behind the door. "Honey, please help me." My throat closed. "Mr." Keller tightened his grip on my arm. "Do not listen." I could not breathe. "Mom," I whispered. The door creaked. Only a little. A thin black line appeared between the door and the frame. Something drifted through the opening. A smell. Lavender soap. Hospital sheets. Rain on the day of her funeral. My eyes filled with tears so quickly I could not stop them. It was impossible. I knew it was impossible. But grief does not care about impossible things. Grief hears the voice it has wanted to hear for years, and for one terrible second it believes. "Daniel," my mother whispered. I waited so long. I pulled away from Mr. Keller. He slapped me. Hard, the sound cracked through the apartment. I stumbled back, stunned, one hand against my cheek. "Listen to me," he hissed. "That is not your mother." The door opened another inch. Behind it, there was no room. No closet. No hallway. Only darkness. But not normal darkness. Not the kind you see when the lights are off. This was thicker than that. Deeper, it seemed to move in slow waves, like black water waiting behind the door. From inside it, my mother began to cry. That sound nearly broke me. I hated Mr. Keller in that moment. I hated him because part of me knew he was right, and I hated him more because another part of me still wanted to push him aside and open the door all the way. He dragged me out of the apartment. The moment we crossed the threshold into the stairwell, all the normal sounds of the building came rushing back. Cars outside. Someone coughing below us. A dog barking in another unit. Pipes groaning. Life, ordinary and loud. Behind my apartment door, something slammed. Once, twice, then came my mother's voice, muffled but screaming. "Daniel, don't leave me again." I spent that night in a hotel. Mr. Keller refused to explain everything, but he told me enough to make sleep impossible. He said apartment 6B had been renovated in 1998 after a fire. The fire had started late at night and moved fast through the building. 3 people died before the fire department arrived. One of them had been his wife. Her name was Anna. He did not say much after that. He sat at the small hotel table with his hands folded, staring at nothing. I asked him if the door had appeared before. He did not answer. I asked if Anna had spoken to him from behind it. His eyes filled with tears, but he still said nothing. The next morning, he called a priest, then a locksmith, then 2 men I had never seen before, who arrived in a white van with no company name on the side. I stood in the hallway while they went into my apartment together. The priest carried a small bag. The locksmith carried tools. The 2 men from the van carried a wooden case between them, though I never saw what was inside. The door to my apartment closed. For a while, nothing happened. Then I heard praying, then shouting, then a sound like wood splitting, followed by a scream that did not sound human or animal. It was too many voices at once. A woman, a man, a child, my mother. Someone else I did not know. I backed away until my shoulders hit the opposite wall. The apartment door opened. Only one of the men from the van came out. The priest followed, pale and shaking so badly he had to hold the wall. The locksmith came next with blood on his shirt. Mr. Keller was last. He would not look at me. "What happened?" I asked. The locksmith pushed past me and left without his tools. The remaining man from the van said nothing. He walked down the hall, got into the elevator, and disappeared. Mr. Keller reached into his coat and handed me an envelope. Inside was cash. A lot of it. "Move," he said. "What about my things? Leave them." I stared at him. "Are you serious? My clothes are in there. My laptop. My photos." "Leave them," he repeated. "What happened in there?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were wet. "The door is gone," he said. For 1 second, I felt relief. Then he added, "But now there's a window." I did not go back. Not for my clothes, not for my laptop, not for the box of photographs under my bed, not even for the last picture I had of my mother, the one I kept in the drawer beside my bed. Leaving that hurt more than I can explain, but I could not make myself cross that threshold again. I found another apartment across town. It was smaller, more expensive, and louder. I told myself that was good. Noise became a comfort. Neighbors arguing through the walls, cars outside, music from the street. Anything was better than silence. I changed my phone number. I stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. I avoided Mr. Keller's building completely. For a while, I almost convinced myself that I had escaped. Months passed. Then, a year. Sometimes I dreamed of the door, but dreams fade in daylight. I started sleeping through the night again. I bought new furniture. I replaced my clothes. I even found a new copy of the photo of my mother from an old family email. It was not the same, but it was something. I almost forgot the sound of those 3 slow knocks. Until tonight. At 2:13 in the morning, I woke up in the dark. For a moment, I did not know why. Then I heard it. 3 slow knocks. Not from my front door, not from the hallway, from behind my bedroom wall. I sat up, every part of me cold. The room was silent. Too silent. Then my mother's voice whispered through the wall. "Daniel," she said softly. I found another way in. Story 4. I keep hearing things when I'm in the shower, and I'm starting to think I'm losing my mind. To explain this properly, you need to know where I live. My apartment is small, old, and badly maintained. The whole building feels like it is one strong storm away from giving up. The floors creak even when no one is walking on them. The walls pop and crack when the temperature changes. In winter, the pipes make horrible screaming sounds in the middle of the night, like someone is dragging heavy furniture through the walls. After living there for a while, you stop asking questions. Strange sounds become part of the place. You hear a bang from upstairs and tell yourself it is just the pipes. You hear footsteps outside your door and tell yourself it is a neighbor. You hear the walls groan and tell yourself the building is settling. That is why I ignored it the first time. I had just come home from a long shift at work. My body was tired, my head was heavy, and all I wanted was a hot shower. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to the bathroom. The warm water hit my shoulders, and for the first few minutes, I felt myself finally relax. Then, through the steady hiss of the shower, I heard a sound. It was a long, slow creak. Metal against metal. It sounded exactly like my front door opening. I froze under the water. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe one of my neighbors had come home. The walls in that building were so thin that I could usually hear people moving around in the apartments beside mine. Sometimes sounds traveled strangely through the hallway. Maybe someone else's door had opened, and the water made it sound closer than it was. Then I heard another sound. Footsteps. Slow, soft footsteps. They sounded like bare feet crossing the floor. They moved with a careful rhythm. Not fast, not rushed. Just slow and steady. As if someone had stepped inside my apartment and was taking their time. I reached out and turned off the water. The bathroom went silent. "Hello?" I called. Nothing answered. No footsteps, no creak, no shifting floorboards, not even the low groan of the building settling. For a few seconds, I stood there dripping wet, listening as hard as I could. My heart was beating fast enough that I could hear it in my ears. Then I started to feel stupid. If someone really had broken in, standing naked in the shower was not going to help me. So I stepped out, grabbed a towel, and wrapped it around myself. I dried off as fast as I could, pulled on a t-shirt and sweatpants, and slowly opened the bathroom door. The apartment was empty. I checked the living room first, half expecting to find someone sitting on my couch. There was no one there. The kitchen was empty too. I checked my bedroom, then the closet, then under the bed, even though no grown adult could have fit there comfortably. I checked the bathroom again, just in case I had somehow missed something. Nothing. The place was completely empty. Then I checked the front door. The deadbolt was locked. The chain was still in place. There was no way anyone could have opened that door from the outside. No one could have come in. No one could have left. I stood there staring at it, feeling a cold, strange discomfort settle in my stomach. If someone had entered my apartment, they had not come through the front door, and they had not left through it either. I was ready to blame the whole thing on the terrible acoustics of the building when something near the entryway caught my eye. A small ceramic bowl was sitting on the floor. It was lying on its side near the wall, as if someone had placed it there or knocked it down and left it. I frowned and picked it up. The bowl was beige, chipped around the rim, and ugly in a boring kind of way. It had been in the apartment when I moved in. I never used it for anything important, but I also never threw it away. Most of the time, it sat on my coffee table and held my keys. I carried it back to the coffee table and set it down where it belonged. Guess the ghost came back for his bowl, I muttered. I even smiled when I said it. Looking back, I wish I had taken that joke more seriously. I checked the windows after that. Every one of them was closed. The cheap little latches were still locked. There were no scratches on the frames, no signs that anyone had forced their way inside. Eventually, I laughed at myself. It was not a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh you let out when you are embarrassed by your own fear. I had worked a 10-hour shift. I had skipped lunch. I had come home tired and gone straight into a hot shower. My body was exhausted. My brain was probably filling in blanks. The building was old, the walls were thin, and running water could twist sound in weird ways. Most likely, I had heard one of my neighbors come home. That explanation was good enough for me. By the next evening, I had almost forgotten the whole thing. My routine was exactly the same. I came home from work, threw my keys and bag onto the couch, and went straight into the bathroom. I turned on the shower, waited for the water to get warm, then stepped in. For a few minutes, everything was peaceful. The heat loosened the ache in my shoulders and legs. Steam filled the bathroom. I closed my eyes and let myself relax. Then I heard it again, the slow groan of metal. My front door. My eyes opened. I stood there for a moment, water running down my face, and let out a tired breath. "Nope," I said out loud. "I am not going out there." Part of me hoped that whatever was outside the bathroom had heard me. A second later, the footsteps started. They were faster this time. Bare feet moved from the front door area into the kitchen. One step. Then another. Then another. I do not know why I did it, but I reached for the faucet and turned the shower off. The moment the water stopped, everything went silent. There were no fading footsteps, no movement, no sound of someone running away, just silence. I waited for 30 seconds, then a minute, then 5. At last, I stepped out, dried myself, got dressed, and searched the apartment again. I opened every door. I looked under every piece of furniture. I checked the windows, the locks, the closet, the bathroom, and even the kitchen cabinets. No one was there. Everything was exactly where I had left it, except for the bowl. It was sitting in the middle of the hallway now, several feet from the coffee table. I stared at it for a long time. Then I said, I really need more sleep. I picked up the bowl and put it back on the table, but that night, I barely slept at all. I could explain the sound of the door opening. I could explain the footsteps if I really tried, but the bowl was different. There was no good reason for it to be in the hallway. Nothing I came up with made sense. By morning, I had almost talked myself out of being scared. Maybe I had kicked it without noticing. Maybe I had moved it while cleaning a few days earlier and only thought it had been on the coffee table. Memory is strange. People misremember small things all the time. Still, something about it bothered me. Not enough to make me fully believe my apartment was haunted, but enough that I wanted proof. I wanted to prove to myself that nothing was happening. So after work that evening, I ran a little experiment. I came home, went into the bathroom, turned the shower on full blast, and left it running. Then I went into my bedroom and hid. I stood there quietly, listening. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Then 3. Nothing happened. No creaking metal, no footsteps, no doors opening, no bowl moving, only the sound of water hitting porcelain. See, I whispered to myself, "You're just losing it." I felt ridiculous for even thinking something was wrong. I walked back into the bathroom and turned the water off. That should have settled everything. It did not. The next day, I had to stay late at work finishing paperwork I had been avoiding all week. By the time I finally clocked out, I was already 20 minutes late for a date. I had been looking forward to that date for days. The last thing I wanted was to spend the evening standing in my bathroom, wondering whether my apartment had developed a mind of its own. So when I got home, I tried not to think about it. I threw my bag onto the couch, pulled off my work clothes, and jumped into the shower. I did not think about the experiment. I did not think about the bowl. Not until I heard it. The front door, that same slow groan of metal. Then the footsteps, bare feet crossing the floor, one after another. I swore under my breath, "Not tonight." I reached out and turned off the water. Silence, my phone buzzed on the bathroom counter, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Every instinct in me told me not to look away from the door, but I forced myself to turn and grab it. 2 messages were waiting. Running late? Everything okay? It could not have taken more than 2 seconds to read them. I quickly typed, "Sorry, be there soon." Then I placed the phone back on the counter. When I looked up, the bathroom door was open, not all the way, only 3 or 4 inches, but I knew it had not been open before. I stared at the narrow gap and tried to convince myself I had forgotten to close it properly. The building was old. The hinges were uneven. Doors drifted sometimes. Maybe the air pressure from the shower had pulled it open. Maybe there was some normal explanation. The hallway beyond the door was lit by the lamp in my living room. Warm yellow light cut through the gap and fell across the bathroom floor. I stood there, dripping wet and afraid, staring at that thin strip of light. Waiting, I did not know what I expected. Maybe I expected the door to move again. Maybe I expected a face to appear in the crack. Instead, something shifted just beyond the opening. It was only there for a moment. A pale flicker. Thin, quick gone, before my eyes could focus on it. Then I heard a switch snap. Click, the hallway light went out. Darkness swallowed the gap. For a second, all I could hear was the shower still running. My hand found the faucet almost by itself, and I twisted it shut. Silence. The bathroom door was closed again. I do not remember getting dressed. Not clearly. I remember pulling clothes on with shaking hands and refusing to look away from the door for more than a second at a time. I remember grabbing my phone, my keys, and my bag. I remember leaving the apartment so quickly that I did not check the bowl. The rest of the night almost felt normal. My date noticed I was quiet, but I blamed it on work. He did not push. We had dinner. We talked. I answered when I needed to, smiled when I was supposed to, and tried to act like I was not thinking about my apartment. About the bathroom. About the door. After dinner, we went back to his place. On any other night, I probably would have been excited. That night, I was just relieved not to be going home. Eventually, I fell asleep there fully dressed, curled on the edge of his bed while he scrolled on his phone beside me. At some point, he turned off the lamp. I remember thinking I should get up, go home, and sleep in my own bed, but I could not make myself face that apartment again. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was coming through the blinds. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then I remembered where I was. My phone was dead on the floor beside the bed. My date was still asleep, breathing slowly beside me. I sat up carefully, trying not to wake him, and began piecing together the night before. For one brief moment, I almost convinced myself that everything that had happened in my apartment was stress, lack of sleep, a bad week. Maybe I had imagined the footsteps. Maybe the door had opened on its own. Maybe the light had gone out because the old bulb finally died. Then I saw something on the nightstand beside the bed. A small ceramic bowl, beige, chipped along the rim, sitting perfectly upright in the morning light. Story 5. I drive long haul for a living. I'm a woman, I'm 28, and for most of the last 4 years, I have spent more nights alone in my truck than in any real bedroom. I eat sunflower seeds while I drive and crack the shells with my front teeth, even though my dentist has told me more than once that I am going to ruin them. I know it is a bad habit. I know I should stop. But if I am going to spend my life on highways and sleep in parking lots, I might as well fit at least one trucker stereotype. I know my truck the way most people know their own hands. I know the sound of my engine from outside and from inside the cab. I know the difference between another rig idling 2 spots away and my own truck turning over. I know the way my tires sound on gravel, asphalt, wet pavement, and cracked concrete. I know the tiny movement the sleeper makes when I shift my weight in bed. I know which cabinet rattles when I hit a bad patch of road, and which one only rattles when the wind hits from the west. After enough time alone in a truck, the machine stops feeling like a vehicle and starts feeling like a body you are living inside. That is why I knew something was wrong the second my truck moved without me. I had stopped for my 10-hour reset. For anyone who does not know, long-haul drivers cannot just keep driving until we feel like stopping. There are federal rules about how long you can be behind the wheel before you have to rest. The electronic logging device, or ELD, is the system that watches it all. It tracks drive time, location, engine status, and whether you are on duty, off duty, driving, or in the sleeper berth. You cannot really cheat it, at least not in any way worth losing your license over. When your hours are up, you stop. I had already driven most of the day. By the time I pulled into the truck stop off the interstate in West Virginia, it was a little before 2 in the morning, and I was exhausted in that deep, heavy way only highway driving can make you. The kind of tired where your whole body feels full of sand, but your mind is still buzzing from hours of headlights and lane lines. The trailer attached to my truck was sealed. The paperwork said medical equipment. The seal had been intact when I picked it up in Pittsburgh, and when you are hauling sealed freight like that, you do not open it to be curious. You check the seal number against the paperwork, sign where you need to sign, and drive. That is exactly what I did. Nothing about the load had felt strange. I parked, set the brakes, logged sleeper berth, and went inside. A truck stop at 2 in the morning has its own kind of sadness. The light is always too bright and too cold. The coffee has been sitting too long. The food under the heat lamps looks like it gave up hours ago. The floor has that permanent shine that never looks clean, only wet. There were a few other drivers walking around with shower bags, all of them wearing that same empty late-night look. A man near the window was watching something on his phone with the volume up and no headphones, because there is always one. A huge moth kept throwing itself against the window beside the door. It hit the glass, dropped a little, flew up, and hit the same spot again, over and over. I remember thinking it looked determined, but not smart. I noticed the two people by the drink coolers because they did not fit the hour. Everyone else looked worn out. They did not. The woman had dark hair and wore a red jacket. The man beside her was thin, with a gray zip-up hoodie. They stood very close together without touching. That alone was not enough to be strange, but something about them bothered me. They were too still, too awake. They were not browsing or talking or checking prices. They were standing there like they had been placed in the aisle. I got my shower code and went down the hall. The showers at that chain are better than most people would expect. A locking door, clean towels, water hot enough to hurt a little if you stand under it too long. That is how I like it. When you live on the road, a hot shower can make you feel human again, even if only for 15 minutes. When I came out, the woman in the red jacket was standing at the sinks. She had both hands resting on the edge of one sink, but she was not washing them. She was not fixing her hair. She was not checking her phone. She was just facing the mirror. I stepped out with my shower bag over one shoulder and said, "Oops, sorry." Driving alone most of the year has made me more awkward than I used to be. I apologize to people when I have not done anything wrong. I apologize to automatic doors when they open too slowly. The woman smiled at me through the mirror. She did not turn around, just smiled at me through the glass. I looked away first. After that, I bought a bottle of water, a protein bar, and a bag of extra salty sunflower seeds. The man from the drink cooler was now in the jerky aisle. He stood in front of the beef jerky, holding one bag in his hand, but he was not looking at it. He was looking past it, at the shelf behind it. I walked by him. He did not move. At the register, I looked back once. He was still standing in the same spot, holding the same bag, in the exact same position. I went back to my truck. The sleeper in my truck is the only place in the world that is entirely mine. I have a blackout curtain between the cab and the bunk, and another curtain around the bunk itself, because I am a very light sleeper. I have a weighted blanket, a satin pillowcase, because I still want my hair to look decent on the rare occasion someone sees me. A white noise machine about the size of my fist, earplugs, wipes, lip balm, and more sunflower seeds than any grown person should own. Yes, before anyone says it, I have basically become a hamster. I also have a small warm strip of light taped under the shelf and an iPad mounted near the bunk for my legally allowed hours of useless scrolling. My phone was charging on the dash because that outlet works better than the one by the bed. That detail matters now. It did not seem important then. The last thing I remember before falling asleep was watching a video on my iPad of a woman pouring rice into a glass jar for organization. I remember thinking, in a sleepy way, that she owned more kinds of flour than anyone who actually baked would ever need. Then I fell asleep. The backup alarm woke me. Beep, beep, beep. Truck stops are never quiet. There are always reefer units, humming, engines idling, air brakes hissing, people slamming doors and side boxes at 4 a.m. like nobody else exists. So at first, I thought the backup alarm belonged to another truck. I have slept through worse, Then the sleeper moved under me. I sat up too fast and hit my shoulder on the cabinet above the bunk. For a second, I was too confused to feel scared. The white noise machine was still making its fake rain sound. I pulled one earplug out. The backup alarm kept beeping. Then I heard tires turning over gravel. My gravel. Under my truck. We stopped. The air brakes sighed. Then we moved forward again. My brain tried to make the situation normal. Maybe I was being towed. Maybe I had parked somewhere I was not supposed to. Maybe another truck had bumped me hard enough to rock the sleeper. Maybe I was still half asleep, and the movement belonged to someone else close by. But I know my truck. I know the way it feels when it moves. The curtain between the cab and my sleeper was closed. Dashboard light bled around the edges, blue and green, shifting slightly with each movement. My phone was on the dash, plugged in and useless, only a few feet away. My iPad was beside me in the bunk. I slowly opened the curtain about 2 inches. There were 2 people in the cab. The woman in the red jacket was in the driver's seat. The man in the gray zip-up was in the passenger seat. Both were facing forward. Her hands rested on the wheel evenly, almost too evenly, the way a doll's hands look when someone has placed them there. Her fingers barely wrapped around the steering wheel. Her shoulders were square to the windshield. She did not move like a person driving a 60,000-pound vehicle. She did not check the mirrors. She did not adjust the wheel. She did not shift her weight with the turns. She was simply sitting upright while my truck moved. The man sat the same way. Forward, still, hands in his lap, palms up, fingers slightly curled. I did not see either of them breathe. Neither of them spoke. I let the curtain fall shut. I do not know how long I stayed there, sitting on the bunk with one hand still gripping the curtain. Long enough for the gravel sound to change into pavement. Long enough for the fake rain from the white noise machine to become the loudest thing in the world. That machine, which usually helps me sleep, suddenly made everything worse. I could not hear the road clearly. I could not hear the cab. I could not hear them. I wanted to turn it off. I did not want them to know I was awake. I checked the iPad. 1 bar of signal. Barely anything. My phone was right there, about 3 feet away on the dash, but it might as well have been across the state. I could see the edge of it glowing faintly through the curtain gap. I opened the curtain again. Nothing had changed. The woman was still sitting straight with her hands on the wheel. The man was still beside her, with his hands in his lap. Only the road outside had changed. We were past the truck stop entrance now, moving toward the highway. I know that road. I have driven it dozens of times. Some stretches of highway live in your body after enough trips. You do not need signs to know where you are. You feel it. There is a flat patch first, then a bend, then the downward grade starts. Other drivers do not like that stretch. Nobody does, really. I knew what came after the bend. There is a runaway truck ramp on that road. If you do not know what that is, it is a long uphill bed of gravel and sand cut into the side of a steep road. It is there for trucks whose brakes have failed. If a rig cannot stop on the downgrade, the driver aims for the ramp, and the deep gravel and incline slow the truck before it can crash into traffic or go through a guardrail. They are meant to save lives. I have passed that ramp many times. There is a warning sign before it. Runaway truck ramp 2 miles. Runaway vehicles only. My truck was not speeding. It was not shaking. It was not swerving. The engine brake was working the way it should. The road was dry and clear. There was no reason for my truck to need that ramp. I think that is where she was taking it anyway. I opened the curtain again because I needed my phone. I cursed myself silently for leaving it plugged into the dash. I tried to think of a way to reach it without getting their attention. I looked around the bunk for something long enough to hook the cord or pull the phone toward me. Everything within reach was too short, too soft, or too loud to move without making noise. When I looked up, their heads had started turning. Only their heads. Their shoulders stayed exactly where they were, square to the windshield. Her hands stayed on the wheel. His hands stayed in his lap. Their heads turned at the exact same speed, smooth and slow. For half a second, the dashboard lights moved across their faces. Their eyes caught the light wrong, not like human eyes. I stopped breathing. Their heads stopped turning before they could have fully seen me. The angle was already wrong by then, somewhere between forward and backward, past the point where a neck should be able to turn without the shoulders following. Then, without moving the rest of her body, the woman adjusted the rear view mirror. I dropped the curtain and prayed it made no sound. I am typing this now with the iPad brightness turned all the way down, under the blanket, trying to keep my fingers quiet. I do not know if they can hear me. I do not know if they can hear my breathing. I do not know why they stopped turning their heads. Maybe they already knew I was awake. Maybe they only wanted me to know that they knew. A few minutes ago, we passed the next sign. I saw the yellow flash of it through a tiny gap in the curtain. Runaway truck ramp 1 mile. I know this road. There is another sign at the half-mile mark. After that, the ramp comes up fast on the right, a hard turn into deep gravel at a bad angle. If you are not ready for it, you miss it. The white noise machine is still running. I hate it now. I cannot separate the fake rain from the real sound of the road underneath us. Every small change in the tires makes me think we have hit the ramp. Every shift of the engine makes me think we are turning. Every time the curtain moves because of air from the vents, I think it is a hand. I looked again. My phone is still on the dash, the woman is still driving, the man is still beside her. Neither of them has moved except for the mirror. We just passed the half-mile sign. Runaway truck ramp, 1.5 mile. I am going to try for my phone. I waited until the road began to bend because I knew the cab would tilt just enough to maybe hide my movement. My hand was shaking so badly I almost stopped before I started. I slid one knee forward on the mattress, then reached through the curtain gap, keeping my body low. The phone cord was close. So close. I could see the black cable hanging from the dash. I stretched 2 fingers toward it and brushed it once. The man in the passenger seat lifted one hand. Not quickly. Not like he was trying to stop me. He raised it slowly from his lap, palm still facing up, fingers curled, like he was waiting for something to be placed in it. I froze. His head did not turn. The woman's hand stayed on the wheel. But the rear view mirror shifted again. By itself. Just a little. Enough for me to see her eyes in it. She was looking at me through the mirror. I pulled my hand back and shut the curtain. I am trying not to cry because if I start, I will make noise. The truck is slowing now. Not braking hard. Not skidding. Just slowing smoothly, carefully, like she knows exactly what she is doing. The road under us has changed. I can feel it through the mattress. We are off the main pavement. The tires are in gravel. Deep gravel. The whole truck is shaking now. The sleeper is rocking from side to side, but not out of control. It feels controlled. Planned, the engine is working harder. The incline is pulling against us. We are on the runaway ramp. The truck has stopped. The white noise machine is still making its fake rain. My iPad is at 7% battery. My phone is still on the dash. They are just sitting there. I waited after we stopped. I thought maybe they would get out. I thought maybe they would open the trailer. I thought maybe this was some kind of hijacking, and I was the idiot hiding in the sleeper while two strangers stole medical equipment. But they are not moving. They are not talking. They are not breathing. The cab is quiet except for the engine and that awful machine beside me. A minute ago, the man spoke for the first time. His voice was dry and flat, and he did not turn around when he said it. She brought the wrong one. The woman answered, still facing forward. "No," she said. "This one knows the truck." Then they went silent again. I do not know what that means. I do not know what they want. I do not know whether they know I am writing this. The trailer behind us just moved. Not the normal shift a trailer makes when a truck settles on gravel. This was different. It came from inside the sealed trailer. A heavy, slow push against the walls. The paperwork said medical equipment. The seal was intact. I checked it myself. Something just hit the inside of the trailer again, harder this time. The woman in the driver's seat laughed. It was the first human sound I have heard from either of them, and somehow it made them feel less human. I can hear the seal on the back doors creaking. I can hear metal bending. The man just said, "She's awake." The woman said, "Then open it." Neither of them has moved, but something outside has. I hear footsteps in the gravel now. Not theirs. Heavy steps coming from behind the truck, moving slowly along the side of the trailer toward the cab. I am under the blanket with the iPad pressed against my chest, trying to type without sound. The footsteps stopped beside the sleeper. Right beside me, there is something outside the wall. It is breathing, not like a person. Long, wet, patient. My phone just lit up on the dash. Incoming call. Unknown number. The woman and the man are still sitting in the cab, facing forward. The phone keeps ringing. I can see the glow through the curtain. The thing outside just tapped the sleeper wall. Once, twice, 3 times. Like it is knocking. The woman said my name. I never told her my name. The phone stopped ringing. Now there is a voicemail notification on the dash. The thing outside is still breathing against the wall. I do not think this was a hijacking. I think the truck stop was where they picked me. I think the ramp was never meant to stop the truck. I think it was meant to stop me somewhere far enough from the road that nobody would hear what came out of the trailer. The sleeper curtain is moving. Not from the vents this time, from the cab side. Someone is pulling it open very slowly. I can see the woman's fingers now. They are too long. I am going to stop typing. If anyone finds this iPad, check the seal number on the paperwork. Check the trailer. And if 2 people at a truck stop look too awake for the hour, do not park near them. Do not leave your phone on the dash. Do not trust your own truck if it starts moving without you. Because I know this truck the way I know my own hands. And something else knows it now too. Story 6. Everyone thinks I am dangerous. They think I am broken, violent, and completely out of my mind. I understand why they believe that. If I were on the outside looking in, I might believe it too. The story sounds impossible. It sounds like something a person would make up after doing something so awful that the truth would destroy them. But I am not making it up. I am not trying to escape blame by hiding behind some wild story. I am telling the truth because I have no other choice. I have tried to lie. I have tried to say what people want me to say. I have tried to confess to crimes I did not commit just so they would stop looking at me like a monster. But my mouth will not let me. My hands will not let me. Every time I try to write a false confession, the words change into the truth. Every time I try to say I killed them, my voice says what really happened instead. So I will start at the beginning, even if you do not believe me. I fell in love with a boy named Parker. That sounds simple, almost ordinary, but nothing about Parker felt ordinary to me. He was not just a boy I dated in senior year. He was the first person who ever made me feel like I was not something temporary. I had spent most of my life moving through foster homes, group homes, spare bedrooms, and places where people treated me like a problem they had agreed to keep for a little while. I had been in the system since I was 2 years old. By the time I met Parker, I already knew not to expect much from people. I changed schools more times than I can count. I learned how to pack quickly. I learned how to sleep lightly. I learned that adults could smile at social workers and then scream the moment the door closed. Some foster parents forgot to buy me clothes that fit. Some forgot meals. Some fought all night. Some threatened to kick me out over things so small I could not understand why they mattered. But I did not let that become my whole life. I held on to school because school was the one thing I could control. If I studied until my eyes burned, that was fine. If I had no real friends because I was always moving or always too busy, that was fine too. Education was my ladder. It was the only thing I trusted to pull me somewhere better. Then, in senior year, Parker happened. I could tell you about the first time we spoke, about how awkward and sweet he was, about how he made me laugh when I had spent years teaching myself not to need anyone. I could tell you how his mother hugged me the first time I came over for dinner, and how I almost cried because I could not remember the last time an adult held me like I mattered. I could tell you how Parker's father started checking my tires, asking about my classes, and quietly becoming the closest thing to a father I had ever known. But none of those beautiful details matter the way they used to, because they are all dead now. Not just dead. They were butchered in front of me by beings that came from somewhere far beyond this world. It started many months ago, on what should have been the happiest night of my life. Maddie, Parker's dad, called from downstairs. "You got a package." I was in Parker's old bedroom, half studying and half pretending to study. I called back. I didn't order anything, but if it's candy, I accept this gift with full joy. Parker's mother laughed from below. "A wonderful gift indeed. Come quickly, dear." There was something playful in her voice, but I did not understand it yet. I hurried down the stairs, expecting to see Parker holding a box of Belgian chocolates, or maybe the French pastries I loved so much. He liked surprising me with little things, especially when I had been stressed. When I stepped into the living room, I froze. Parker was down on one knee. He held an open ring box in both hands, and his parents stood on either side of him, smiling like they could barely contain themselves. For a second, I could not breathe. The room seemed too bright, too warm, too perfect. Parker looked nervous and hopeful, and before he even finished asking, I screamed yes. I threw myself into his arms. I said it again and again. Yes, 1,000,000 times yes. He laughed, his mother cried, and his father pretended not to, even though his eyes were wet. That house had always felt safe to me, but in that moment, it felt like home in a way nothing ever had before. We celebrated for hours. Parker's father opened an expensive bottle of champagne he had apparently been saving. Parker's mother made a late dinner, even though none of us were really hungry. We talked about dates, colors, flowers, and all the silly future things that suddenly felt real. I kept looking at the ring on my finger, turning my hand in the light, unable to believe it was mine. After everyone finally went to bed, I could not sleep. I slipped out from under the blankets and walked quietly through the house. I went downstairs and stood in the living room, looking at all the family photos on the walls and shelves. Parker as a baby. Parker's parents when they were young. Grandparents, cousins, holiday dinners, beach trips, birthdays, weddings. A whole history. A whole family. And somehow, I had been invited into it. I sat on the couch and stared at those photos, smiling to myself. I imagined our own wedding picture joining them one day. I imagined children, holidays, and Sunday dinners. I imagined being embraced not only by Parker and his parents, but by everyone who had come before them. It had taken me 23 years, but I finally believed I was going to belong somewhere. Then I felt a presence in the room. At first, I thought Parker had come looking for me. I turned toward the recliner where his father usually sat. Something was sitting there. It looked like the kind of alien a child might draw if you asked them to imagine a creature from Mars. Its skin was green. Its head was long and oval-shaped, much larger than a human head. Its eyes were huge, black, and glossy. Its nose was flat and almost reptile-like, and its mouth was nothing more than a thin split in its face. Its fingers were far too long, at least twice the length of human fingers, and they rested calmly on the arms of the recliner. Even sitting down, I could tell it was tall. Over 6 feet easily, its body was thin and wiry, covered in a black one-piece suit that looked like leather but moved strangely when it breathed. And it was breathing. That was how I knew it was not a statue, not a toy, not some horrible prank. Still, for a few seconds, I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny, but because my mind refused to accept it. I thought I had to be dreaming. That was the only thing that made sense. I waited for the dream to change, for the scene to become silly or strange in the way dreams do. The alien stared at me. I stared back. After what felt like half a minute, it spoke in a flat, robotic voice. I am going to kill this family tonight. Cold spread through me so fast, it felt like my blood had turned to ice. My fingers went numb. My feet felt far away. I still wanted to believe it was a dream, so I sat completely still, hoping I would wake up. The alien tilted its head. I think it read my mind. "You are not dreaming," it said. "I am going to kill this family tonight, and you are going to take the blame for it. No new family for you. You will suffer until the day you die." Something inside me changed then. The fear was still there, but it turned hot. It burned through the frozen shock in my body. I screamed Parker's name. The alien did not move. It looked almost relaxed. "Thank you for bringing him to us," it said. "We are not skilled with stairs." That sentence made the fear worse. We, not I. We. I looked around the living room, then toward the kitchen, then toward the stairs. I did not see any others, but suddenly I felt like they could be anywhere. Hiding in the dark, waiting in the corners, already upstairs. I regretted screaming the moment Parker came running down the stairs with a baseball bat in his hands. He stopped when he saw the alien. "What the hell is that?" He shouted. He rushed to me first, checking my face, my arms, my shoulders, looking for blood or bruises. "I'm fine," I said, though I was anything but fine. "Parker, you all have to get out. That thing said it's going to kill your family." The alien answered before Parker could. "We are not killing everyone," it said, "only the family, and you are going to take the blame." "Like hell she is," Parker snapped. He raised the baseball bat and swung with everything he had. The bat cracked against the alien's large head. Nothing happened. The alien stood up slowly. It was taller than I had realized, tall enough that the top of its oval head nearly touched the ceiling. Parker stepped back, but only for a second. "Run," he yelled at me. "Get out of here." Before I could move, Parker's parents appeared at the bottom of the stairs. They must have heard the shouting. Parker's father was in a robe, his face confused and angry. Parker's mother stood behind him, one hand on the railing. Then, two more aliens stepped out from the kitchen. They looked exactly like the first one. Before anyone could react, one of them grabbed Parker's father around the shoulders. The other grabbed Parker's mother. Their long fingers closed over them like metal clamps. The first alien moved behind Parker and locked one arm around his neck in a sleeper hold, then tossed the baseball bat aside as if it weighed nothing. "Get your hands off my wife," Parker's father shouted, struggling. "What is going on? Let go of my son." Then he looked at me. "Maddie, run." Even then, he was trying to protect me. All three of them fought, but it did not matter. The aliens were too strong. They held Parker and his parents as easily as adults holding small children. Their faces did not change. Their black eyes did not blink. "What do you want?" Parker shouted. No answer. "Please," I begged from the couch. "Please leave them alone. Do not hurt them. Please." For one terrible moment, I thought my begging had worked. The aliens looked at each other. They tilted their heads as if they were thinking. Then, at the same time, they let go. I breathed out in relief. A second later, they grabbed Parker and his parents by the arms. The sound came next. A crunch, a wet tearing snap, a heavy splash. They ripped their arms from their bodies. Cleanly, easily, like children pulling the limbs off dolls. Blood burst across the room. It hit the walls, the floor, the couch, and the family photos I had been staring at only minutes earlier. Parker screamed. His mother screamed. His father screamed. I screamed too, though my pain was not physical. Mine was the pain of watching the only family I had ever loved being destroyed in front of me. Time seemed to stop. The aliens held them up by their shoulders while blood poured from the ruined sockets where their arms had been. Parker's face twisted in agony, but he still looked at me. His mother sobbed. His father kept trying to speak, trying to tell me to go. I could not move. I hated myself for that. I still do. My body stayed locked in place. I wanted to run to Parker, to kiss him one last time, to wrap myself around him and follow him wherever he was going next. I wanted to do anything except sit there and scream, but my legs would not obey me. Later, I learned from the police report that the screaming lasted about 2 minutes. The neighbors heard it. They called 911. For 2 full minutes, the aliens held Parker and his parents upright and allowed them to scream. Even through their pain, they told me to run. I did not want to live without them. I did not want to be blamed for what was happening. But finally, something in my body reacted. I decided I would run, and then I would find a way to end my life before they could take me away. In that moment, it felt like the only path left. If I could not live with Parker's family, then I would die and hope to find them somewhere beyond this. I stood. Parker smiled through his pain. It was weak, broken, full of blood and suffering, but it was still a smile meant for me. I turned to run. Behind me, I heard 3 soft cracks, then silence, then the sound of bodies falling to the floor. I did not see it happen, but I knew what they had done. They had snapped their necks, all 3 of them at the same time. A fast death was the least cruel thing they gave them. I turned back and screamed, "Why did you do this?" The aliens ignored me. Each of them looked down at the body they had killed. Then each placed 1 foot on the victim's torso, bent over, and grabbed 1 leg. "No," I screamed. "Leave them alone. You have done enough." Another snap. Another wet pop. They tore off the left legs. Then, a few seconds later, the right legs. One of the aliens produced several black garbage bags from somewhere. It handed them to the others. I watched in horror as they calmly collected the severed limbs and placed them inside the bags, like they were cleaning up after a job. I could not understand it. The killing had been terrible enough, but this was different. This was careful. Planned, they were taking pieces of them. One of the aliens turned toward me, as if it had suddenly remembered I was there. It held out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. "You can live and be responsible for this," it said in that same casual, robotic voice. "Or you can end it now and be with the family you wanted so badly." I slapped the vial away. It hit the floor, but did not break. "Liar," I screamed. "Why would I believe you? You already said I would take the blame." The alien made a rough grinding sound. I think it was laughing. Another alien picked up the vial and walked toward me. The one I had spat at grabbed me by the shoulders and held me in place. I fought, kicked, twisted, and screamed, but it was like being held by a machine. The other alien opened the bottle and forced it between my lips. I tried not to swallow. It pinched my nose closed with those long fingers. My lungs burned. My throat tightened. Finally, my body betrayed me, and I swallowed. The liquid had almost no taste, just a faint bitterness and a cold feeling that spread down my throat into my chest. They let me go. "What did you give me?" I screamed, coughing and spitting. They did not answer. I fell beside Parker's body. The aliens moved around the room, but I barely noticed them anymore. I pulled what was left of Parker toward me and cradled his head and torso. His face was frozen in that last smile, the one he had given me because he believed I was about to escape. I do not remember the aliens leaving. I remember sirens. At first, they sounded far away, then closer, then right outside the house. That was when I understood. The aliens had told the truth. I was going to take the blame. If I was lucky, maybe they would sentence me to death. If I was unlucky, I would spend my life locked away, waiting decades to see Parker and his parents again. I stood suddenly and ran toward the kitchen. I wanted a knife. I wanted to be gone before the police could stop me. But there was blood under my feet. I slipped hard and crashed to the floor, landing on my shoulder with enough force to make the room flash white. I told myself to get up. I only needed a few seconds. But those seconds were all the police needed. They entered the house with guns raised. I was on the floor, covered in blood, surrounded by what was left of Parker and his parents. I knew exactly how it looked. I started screaming that I did not do it. I screamed about the aliens. I told them everything before they even put the handcuffs on me. No one believed me. Why would they? The investigation found nothing that helped me. The home surveillance showed no strangers entering or leaving. Neighboring cameras that had a view of the house showed the same thing. As far as anyone could tell, Parker, his parents, and I were the only people in the house that day. Logically, I was the only person who could have done it. My court-appointed lawyer visited me several times before the trial. He was not unkind, but he looked at me like I was already a lost cause. He told me I had two choices. I could keep telling the alien story and spend the rest of my life in a psychiatric hospital. Or I could confess to the murders, accept punishment, and spend the rest of my life in a maximum security prison. He tried to explain it in practical terms. Prison would be terrible, but there would be routine. I would have a cell. Maybe a cellmate. I could exercise, work, read, study, maybe even earn degrees. I had always loved learning. I would never use a degree outside, but at least my mind might still belong to me. A hospital would be different. With no family to fight for me, no advocate, no one who truly believed me, I would be labeled dangerous and delusional. I would be heavily medicated, restrained if needed, moved from room to room like something that had to be managed rather than a person who could still feel. I understood. I decided I would confess, not because I had done it, but because I wanted prison instead of the hospital. I wanted the small mercy of routine. I wanted books. I wanted my mind. I wanted to be somewhere where I could still count days and maybe feel like a person. I opened my mouth to tell my lawyer I would confess, but the words would not come out. Instead, I said, aliens killed them. I tried again. I killed them, I wanted to say, but my mouth said, they came into the house. They tore them apart. My lawyer went pale. He told me to stop. I tried to force the right words out, but my tongue would not shape them. My mouth kept telling the truth, no matter what I wanted. Out of frustration, I started hitting myself in the head right in front of him, as if I could knock the wrong words loose and make the right ones appear. That only made me look more insane. Then I tried writing a confession. My hand would not do it. Every time I tried to write, I killed Parker and his parents. My fingers wrote. The aliens killed them. I broke pencils. I snapped crayons. I destroyed markers. I screamed until my throat hurt. None of it helped. The trial was worse than death. Parker's extended family came. They sat there looking at me with grief, anger, pity, and disgust. Some of them believed I had suffered a mental break because of my childhood. They thought the trauma had finally destroyed me. When they heard about me hitting myself in the head and ruining every pencil because it would not write what I wanted, some of them cried. I think that hurt most. They did not all hate me. Some pitied me, and somehow, that felt even worse. I was found not responsible by reason of insanity and sent away. It was on the first day of the rest of my life in the hospital, while I was strapped down and sedated, that I finally understood what the aliens had done to me. Until then, I had thought the liquid they forced into my mouth was poison that failed, or some drug meant to make me look unstable. But when the sedatives entered my body and my mind began to drift, I had one clear moment of understanding. The liquid forced me to tell the truth about that night, not truth in general, not every thought I had, only that truth. The truth the aliens wanted me trapped inside. They had not wanted me in prison. They had wanted me in a hospital. When they told me I would suffer until the day I died, I had assumed they meant I would be blamed and locked away. But prison would have been too simple, too human, too survivable. They wanted me here, drugged and dismissed, telling a story no one would ever believe. Looking back, I do not even know if I saw their true forms. The way they looked was almost too perfect, too much like the aliens in old movies and children's drawings. Green skin, huge black eyes, long fingers. Maybe that was another part of the plan. Maybe they chose a shape that would make me sound even crazier when I described them. Maybe their real faces were something my mind could not understand. Or maybe the childish shape was the joke. I only had 6 good years in my life. 6 years with Parker. 6 years of dinners, holidays, study sessions, arguments that ended in apologies, and the warmth of a house where I was wanted. 6 years of knowing what a family felt like. I do not know why my life had to be hard before that. I do not know why Parker's family was chosen. I do not know why those beings came into that house and destroyed the only safe place I had ever known. No one here believes me. Some days, even I wish I could stop believing it. When I have lucid moments, I try to remember the good things. I close my eyes and imagine the wedding. I imagine Parker waiting at the end of the aisle, his father trying not to cry, his mother crying openly because she never cared about hiding her feelings. I imagine Sunday brunches. I imagine beach trips. I imagine dancing in the kitchen while Parker laughs at me for being terrible at it. For a few seconds, I can almost live there. But it never lasts. No matter what happy memory I build, the aliens always enter it. They appear in the corner of the room, or at the end of the aisle, or behind Parker at the beach. Their black eyes turn toward me. Their long fingers twitch. Then the slaughter begins again. I watch Parker and his parents die over and over. I watch the arms come off. I watch the blood hit the photos. I hear the screams. I hear the soft cracks of their necks. I watch the aliens gather the limbs into black garbage bags like they are cleaning up trash. And just like that night, I cannot move. When I wake from those dreams, I am usually seizing. Nurses rush in. Hands hold me down. Straps tighten around my wrists and ankles. Medication enters my veins, and the world becomes soft and far away again. This is my life now. I barely exist. I float through heavy medication and bright hospital lights. Sometimes I am too weak to speak. Sometimes I cannot go to the bathroom without help. Time does not feel real here. Days melt into one another. Weeks pass without shape. But I am still counting down. Not with calendars. Not with marks on a wall. Just somewhere deep inside me, in the last part of myself the drugs have not reached, I am waiting for the day my body finally gives up. Maybe then I will see Parker again. Maybe I will see his parents. Maybe, wherever they are, they will know I told the truth.